Okay, we're on Shabbat, Perek Kaf Gimel Mishnah Bet, second Mishnah in the 23rd chapter of Shabbat. We're continuing to discuss things that a person can or cannot do on Shabbat because they're what's called, as we learned in the previous Mishnah, Mimtzo Chefzecha V'daber Davar. Things that are prohibited because they're inappropriate use of speech on Shabbat. Says the Mishnah, Mone Adam et Orchav ve'et Parperotav mipiv. Orchav are guests. Parperotav, that's parperot, it's like parperot hapat. We've seen this phrase in Masechet Brachot. It's like the different dishes you have, the different things you're going to serve at the table. So let's say you have a bunch of guests, and you wrote down the list of the guests. So you can count your guests, mipiv, or you wrote down your menu. You can list out the things that you're serving from by mouth. Avalo minaktav, but you're not allowed to do it from minaktav. You shouldn't read it off a list. What's the problem? Says the Bar Tanura, Gzera Shama Yimchok. Maybe, Klein isn't coming, I'll erase Klein. Inami, or the Bar Tanura says, and this is a problem for us nowadays, Shema Yikra B'Shitrei Hedyotot. Maybe you'll read secular shtarim are contracts, but documents. Ve'en mutar likrot b'Shabbat, ela b'Torah shebichtav. The Bar Tanura says you're not only allowed to read Torah shebichtav, u'b'Torah shebe'al peh la'achar shekatvuha. And you could also read Torah Shabbat. You could read Mishnah, Gemara, Oral Law, Uba Perushaim, and their interpretation. I mean, you could read Torah on Shabbat. Aval b'shar dvarim, but other things, or b'sifrei chochmot, or works of wisdom, she'einam divrei nevuah o mipirushaim, but they're not nevuah, asurim. Meaning, lo minaktav means you're not allowed to read things that aren't Torah on Shabbat. That's what the Bar Tanura says. It's a big problem for many of us. I'm not entirely sure what the solution is. Okay, so you're allowed to count out off by who's here. Schwartz is here, and Friedman is here, and Spalter is here. But you're not allowed to do it from a list because maybe you'll write, maybe you'll erase. Mapis im banav v'im b'nei beito al hashulchan. Mapis means from the word pais. Okay, you might have heard that. Pais in Hebrew is lottery. So you would make a lottery with banav v'bnei beito al hashulchan, with your children and the people in your family al shulchan. Let's say you're giving out the pieces of chalent, and you put them out there, and there's one big piece of meat and a bunch of small pieces of meat. That's an interesting question. Let's assume that they're all the same. We're going to talk about one big and one not. So let's assume that they're all the same size. Okay? But Shlomi wants this one, and Avram wants that one, and Yonah wants that one. So what do? You do a lottery. So says the Mishnah, Mepis im b'nei beito, banav, you're allowed to do a lottery for who gets what food. Ubilvad shlo yitkaven la'asot mana gdola keneged ktana, as long as you don't intend the big one and the small one, i.e. they're all essentially the same size. Mishum kubia. Kubia means dice, but it means because of gambling. So the Bar Tanura says the following. The Bar Tanura, based on the Gemara, says this Mishnah is a chisure mechsera. Okay, the problem is the following. There's two problems. The first one is, if you do the lottery, are people going to fight you about it? Okay? If you do it in B'nai Beito, if you do it with the people, with your family, ala shulchan, they're not going to argue. Whatever you give, you give. But if you're doing it, let's say, for example, we're not family members, but we're all at a restaurant, okay? And we've all paid for the meal. And now they bring out the chalent in the big pot, and now they divvy up, and one guy takes a huge piece of meat, and the other guys, they're very much smaller pieces of meat. They're going to start arguing. They're going to, what do you mean? We'll do a cheshbon. I paid more. How come you get the meat? Why should you get the best piece? So the question is the following. You have banav and b'nei beito, and manag gdola keneged ktana. So with that in mind, let's read the Bar Tanura. Bar Tanura says the following. The Gemara, this is based on the Gemara. The Gemara says that the Mishnah is missing a lot. Chisure mechsura means there's missing words, there's missing pieces. So this is what it should have said. If a person is at home, he can make a lottery, he can decide who gets what. They can do it by chance. Even if one is bigger and one is smaller, okay? But that's only with his family members. But with other people, if they're not your family members, you can't do it. Okay? And when it says, then you can't do it. Okay? In your family, you can't do it. I'm skipping a little because the Kahati interprets it a little bit differently. If you intend not in your family to do different sizes, okay, whatever. One piece of meat is very big, the other is small. We'll do a lottery. No, you can't even do that in chol. Why? Bishum kubia. Because that's gambling. What do you mean it's gambling? So there's big and small. So everybody takes straws. So the guy who got the short straw, yes, he agreed to the deal, but that's gezelhu. Why? Because that's gambling. It's called an asmachta. But asmachta lo kanya. Asmachta means you're making a deal based on an assumption. The assumption, what am I going to assume? When I make the deal, when I agree to gamble, when I agree to do the straws for the big piece, I'm going in and making an assumption. The assumption is, I'm going to win. That's asmachta. Desamihu al goral, because everyone who goes in makes the assumption, im yipolo al goral amana gedola yiskeba. Oh, if I get the big one, I'm going to win. Ulefikach tala atzmo, avle goral aktana ala safek. Therefore, I agree that maybe I'll get the short straw, but I don't think I'm going to get the short straw. V'ilu yadam mitchila shekain. And if I knew that originally, lo hayam mitratzeh, I never would have made the deal. That's the way gambling works according to Chachamim. Gambling is all an asmachta. So when I go in, when we play poker, and you go all in because you think you're going to win. So therefore, when you lose and I get all the money, you don't really want to give me the money. That's kubia. So this is what the Mishnah says. You're allowed to make lottery with your children, with your family, because everybody understands that in the family they're all mivater, they're all giving, whatever, whoever gets whatever. Although with small children it's not true, but hopefully big children it is. But with other people, you cannot do gdola keneged ketana mishum kubia, because that's gambling. Mishnah continues. Umetilin chalashim. Chalashim is another word for lotteries. Look at the Bartanura. Goralot. You do lots. The Kohanim in the Beit HaMikdash would do lots ala kodshim b'yom tov, because the Kohanim, everyone has a merit, everyone has a right to part of the korbanot. So they would take lots on the korbanot, on the kodshim that people offered that belong to the Kohanim on Yom Tov. Avalo al hamanot. That's a very vague phrase. What does it mean, alo hamanot? The manot means, let's do the Bartanura shel kodshim shel etmol. You can't do on Yom Tov, if you didn't divvy it up yesterday, you should have done it yesterday, so that which you couldn't do yesterday, Yom Tov, you do today. The Bartanura says you can't do it on the manot, on the things that were divvied up yesterday, because you should have done the lottery already. All right, there are other interpretations to this phrase, but you can look them up if you want, in the Kati or the Rambam. And we'll stop here and dedicate our learning to the memory of my father, Rav Simcha ben Yitzchak Kalman. Have a good day.